And over to you, Anthea.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pranit. I'm just going to share our screen. Can I just get a thumbs up or a nod if everyone can see the slide? Awesome.
All good.
All right. Take it away, Snishana.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session. Thank you, Pranit, for that lovely introduction. We are very honoured as a team of academic integrity officers at UniSA College to be sharing some of our developments, professional developments, our educative approach as well. And we are very excited to be sharing the new initiatives at UniSA College. So I thought I'd start the presentation by acknowledging the country as well. We also acknowledge the First Nations people and the elders past and present, who are traditional custodians of the land that we meet on today. We acknowledge their spiritual relationship with the country, and we acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the lands and waters of the Adelaide region on which we meet today. In terms of the presentation and academic integrity, I thought I'd start the presentation by providing a little bit of context as to why fostering academic integrity is essential, but also particularly how important it's important to outline its significance in the enabling sector. As many of us educators, we don't have to be academic integrity officers, as many of us as educators are aware academic misconduct is a growing problem for the higher education sector, and it can be difficult to monitor. Research also suggests that academic misconduct amongst undergraduate students, particularly in the first year, can be a result of poor language skills and inexperience with academic conventions. While there's been little research conducted on academic integrity cases, sorry, Anthea, just the first slide first. While there's been little research on academic integrity cases amongst enabling students, anecdotal evidence does suggest that enabling students are particularly at risk of inadvertent academic misconduct. For those of you who are not as familiar with the enabling sector, many of our students come from one or more of the government-defined equity groups. So these can include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, students with disability, students from low socioeconomic status, culturally and linguistically diverse students, students from rural regions, and women from non-traditional areas of study. So if we can get the next slide, thanks. So obviously, without taking the deficit approach, we acknowledge the students studying within the enabling sector or foundation studies programs do require support in terms of being introduced to academic culture, in terms of being enculturated into higher education, learning about academic conventions as well as learning about ethical academic practices. And what's important to also note is that although enabling programs are embedded within the higher education institutions, the enabling space is different to traditional higher education space because of the previously mentioned diversity of the student cohort. So that brings us to the next slide, which is about the actual current approaches to academic integrity in higher education. Some of you are already academic integrity officers within the higher education, and we acknowledge that there's certainly in the past decade or so, there's been a move towards a more transparent educational conversations about academic integrity. However, we also acknowledge that some of the previous approaches to academic integrity in higher education were considered to be more punitive. They were more likely to exacerbate the feelings of fear, shame, and anxiety in the students, and they were likely to create feelings of lack of capability and not belonging. And this is particularly significant for the students in the enabling sector, given that for many, they've experienced education as a gatekeeper. So we certainly wanted to prevent these feelings of not belonging in the first place with our educative approach. We've learned a lot from late Professor Brettag, and it was her work from 2014 that's highlighted increasing awareness that academic integrity principles need to be explicitly taught. And it was outlined in some of this research that it is ethos and skills of academic integrity that need to be reinforced and developed in students and staff at increasing levels of sophistication. And other authors like Morris have also promoted that we embed academic integrity in curriculum, which is precisely what we've done. So our educative approach, and this is what we promoted in our 2018 publication, where we collaborated with the University of Newcastle. We emphasized similarities between an educative approach to academic integrity development and our enabling pedagogy or enabling pedagogies. And essentially, we outlined that both of these approaches are similar. They need to be incorporated in supporting our students to learn academic integrity principles and to foster the culture of academic integrity. In terms of the definitions about enabling pedagogies, generally enabling approach promotes clear explicit instructions being given to students, scaffolding approaches, and modeling, as well as formative opportunities to learn and make mistakes. In this particular publication, we also suggested, in terms of the enabling approach, that support and support-seeking behavior should be normalized, with staff taking an attitude of respectful guidance and flexibility to accommodate diversity of our students in our programs. So implementing this together with an educative approach to an academic integrity development, we promote that this particular ethos of care towards our students, as well as support and support-seeking behaviors, need to be normalized when dealing with academic integrity issues, where not only us as academic counselors, but also our staff take an attitude of respectful guidance and flexibility to accommodate the diversity of our students. So that brings us to this slide about what do we actually do as part of this educative approach. We've developed a number of strategies and supportive learning resources to foster, as outlined, this transparent and educative approach. Anthea and Tam will talk about this in a bit more detail, but it's essentially a holistic approach that not only involves the students, us as academic counselors, but also obviously staff. So it's quite a holistic approach to academic integrity. In terms of the actual practices, we have changed the interview format from individual to group consultation, and Anthea will talk a lot more about this particular practice. We have also provided a number of academic literacy skills workshops, which we've sort of changed and accommodated to each year as we've delivered the courses. But in the recent years, we've actually embedded these literacy workshops as part of the orientation week. So students are introduced to academic integrity, paraphrasing and referencing academic conventions as early as possible. We've also developed a role play video that showcases a student scenario, and I'll talk to this just briefly next, and we're happy to show our video. Also, again, given that some of the actual documents, academic integrity documents, we're still sort of echoing that old punitive approach, what we've done, and in line with our educative approach, but also recognizing the diversity of our student cohort, we've changed the language in the official university AI documents, and we worked quite closely with late Professor Brettag on changing these. And also we've done a lot of in-house record keeping, where we've got management and record keeping of AI cases internally, as well as obviously recording these on the university database. But we also, as part of us being academic counselors, do the post-investigation follow-ups with students, and we also do referrals to the student engagement unit. So in terms of the actual process, sorry, I'm just going to briefly talk to the video, and we're happy to show this after the presentation in case anyone's particularly interested. We're quite proud of this video. As outlined, we really wanted to develop a resource that would sort of in a non-threatening way, explain to students what attending an academic integrity meeting is all about. Lots of students would be worried about, what's this AI meeting? Am I in trouble? Will I be precluded? Can't I just reference everything? So we've actually included, this is two of our alumni here who have recorded video as an informal chat, and they've essentially demystified lots of myths that used to surround academic integrity. And we've later on conducted very brief research on students' perceptions of the video, and many have actually said that the video being included in the email invitation has actually made them feel at ease and comfortable. And we've certainly seen lots of students attend the meetings as a result of the video as well. So as I've said, we're happy to show you the video if you are interested in seeing it at the end of the presentation. The last thing that I want to address is these educative processes. So I talked about a little bit, about this theoretical framework that guides us. But in terms of the actual processes, we try and provide a centralized and consistent approach that includes, as I've outlined, not only addressing the students, but whereby everyone is part of the solution essentially. So we've developed a reporting table whereby the tutors record the cases, and this is Tam will talk a lot more about this in her session, but we often found that tutors would sometimes be confused about some assignments where they weren't sure whether that was an academic integrity case, what to do with them. So we found that having this reporting table that was easily accessible, and everyone had, well, as I've said, is easily accessible, everyone had access to it, was certainly helping with this data and record keeping. And obviously this way we were able to, as academic integrity officers, tap into the reporting table and then start assessing the cases. After the reporting being done to us, we would assess the case, and if it warranted an educative meeting, we would schedule one. This is where we send the email to the student, and we include the video that demystifies what the interview is about. And we also include SMS to students, given that we recognize the students are a lot handier with their phones these days, and sometimes don't get to the email as soon as quickly as we'd like them to. After we send the invitation, a meeting takes place, and an outcome is discussed with the student. Obviously, an email is sent with an official outcome document to the student. Then we update the spreadsheet that we have internally, but we also obviously update the information via the university database. And as part of our post-investigative follow-up, we sometimes might, as I've said, prefer students to learning advisors, given that we acknowledge that often academic integrity is intertwined with a number of different issues or complexities the students might be experiencing. So this is essentially what we try and address in the post-investigation follow-up. And obviously students are aware of who we are. So, we as AIOs, we might deal with a case in January, and sometimes I hear from a student in August still asking a question about academic integrity with regards to some other assignments. So we make sure that we are available, and that students are certainly not, not find the entire experience as overwhelming and as scary as they initially think it would be. All right, I think that's my part, given that we have lots to cover. Thanks, everyone. I'll now hand it over to Anthea.
Thank you, Snezhana. So what I'm going to now focus on is some of the adjustments that we have made to our more recent initiatives over the last few years, and in particular as a result of certain COVID challenges that have meant we've needed to adjust some things, adjust some of the things and the ways that we do them. And I'll just try to unpack a little bit of the nuance within the initiatives that can often be missed when doing a quick share of practices with others. So unpacking the group interview process a little bit further from Snezhana's introductions to it, We do acknowledge here at UniSA College, part of the wider University of South Australia, we do often have high reporting numbers in comparison with other units at UniSA. But with that, we do use academic integrity in very much a proactive role. And of course, as Snejana mentioned, in an educative role in identifying issues earlier on in the semester that might be starting to show. These could be small indications, including perhaps a understanding of paraphrasing, a lack of referencing or appropriate attribution to resources, possible assessments of friends coming through that aren't group assignments that could indicate some collusion, sharing of past assessments between past and previous students, and so on. So there may be some also misunderstanding of assessment criteria and producing unusual assessments not related to marking criteria correctly. So all of these indications could indicate something going on further that needs to be looked into. So as the slide suggests, what our approach is really bringing students into the conversation and to the table to really be a participatory person within this whole process of academic integrity. So we acknowledge the academic counselling role as an academic integrity officer, or AIO, and there is key recognition of students' needs. So supporting understanding and breaking down what may become assumed knowledge, not only for us at the college in that transition space between secondary and tertiary education, but also within further years, and also even at a master's level with students going through and perhaps attending different institutions as they do their further study. So they may not be aware of some academic conventions or other alleviating factors. Sometimes it can be that hidden curriculum. So it's really focusing on bringing students in to engage early around these issues, potentially with plagiarism, referencing, or collusion. And some of these alleviating factors can also include things like health issues, rushing assignments due to work, if not being able to manage their time, with outside factors contributing, and in particular with COVID causing some further exacerbation of work for students, or health or mental health issues. So we really want to make sure that students are brought to the table with this, and we can support them with their academic integrity understanding, and realise that we may see them for academic integrity, but there could be other things in their life that is the reason why they are doing these things. So with the group interview process, why we have adjusted some of our first time and similar breaches to group interviews rather than individual interviews is not only, of course, there is a time factor as well, but group meetings can be supportive to reduce that fear factor. So it can make students be more comfortable in engaging with the AI processes, so they can see that other students are coming up to these meetings as well, so they're not being singled out. With COVID as well, and with having to move online or not being able to do face-to-face meetings as a group, we did also initiate some changes with inclusion of Zoom meetings where required as an option. Just a caveat there, obviously Zoom is not perfect, but with COVID, it made that a necessity as we weren't able to have those in-person face-to-face meetings. Previously, with phone calls that we might have conducted for Zoom meetings, particularly with those students who are external or enrolled in our regional course offerings, phone calls are useful to help you hear that tone and language, but there is, of course, that lack of screen sharing ability, and for the students to be able to engage with the process, look at their assessments, and work with you to support them in moving forward and understanding where they could improve on their paraphrasing or referencing, or what issues might have taken place. With Zoom meetings, of course, we do encourage camera sharing where possible, so you can see the student and their body language. That also helps us when we're conducting these meetings to get a gauge of if they're stressed or not, and how we can alleviate that anxiety. But of course, it's not always 100% foolproof. There can also be issues if we want to record that Zoom meeting, but often we will also ensure that another staff member is in the process with that meeting as well. So we often have a professional staff member on hand to take notes and jot down outcomes for the meeting, so we can really focus on that interaction with the students. And if students are not including their cameras or using the chat, if it is a Zoom meeting, you can still, of course, use chat or use the participatory sort of that yes or no to see if they're still being able to engage. So we recommend that face-to-face is preferable, but Zoom can accommodate some needs, of course. And at the start of the meeting as well, students are asked if they are comfortable to continue discussing the assignment in a group setting. So if they are in that group meeting, they can opt out, but ever since we've been academic integrity officers, probably for me since 2012, this has not happened so far. So students are quite willing, they can see other students, and it really does open that sort of conversation. One other initiative that continues to open the conversation around academic integrity is also the introduction of additional supports embedded within the courses that we might have. One of those that we have utilised for the last couple of years is an academic integrity board game, care of the amazing Dr. Amanda White from UTS, that some of you may have heard of before. We are lucky that you can access this information from her online website. She's shared it as a Creative Commons resource. So we're really lucky that there's a great academic integrity community that is able to share all these additional resources and supports. So with our approaches, the specifics for UniSA College, we actually integrate this into one of our core courses, an academic literacies course. And the idea is, if you can open that conversation and embed any sorts of initiatives or resources in discussions around referencing and paraphrasing, that can be really, really useful. We are quite lucky that we do have one core course that the UniSA College students will complete. And so there is an opportunity for us to embed this 30-minute activity within a tutorial session. But there may be a chance that if you think within your programs, is there an opportunity to include something like this somewhere within the program sphere? The, I guess, importance of this is that further reduction of any fear. So this is a low stakes game, not tied to any grades, and you're able to develop your own tailored questions and scenarios. So students have been using and engaging with this in our week 4 tutorials. It takes around 30 minutes of a 2-hour tutorial session that we might have, and we can really address specific key issues for our cohort, being new to the university culture and university life, so we can really make those questions and discussions relevant. For example, like where to get support for writing at UniSA, you might have a question asking, do you get it from your friend? Do you get it from a learning advisor? Do you get it from PASS? Or do you get it off the internet? And then they can work through those questions. And also things about consult hours or other supports. So implementation of that can be done really, really easily. I'm not going to dwell too much on this because this is Amanda's work, but through UniSA, we have been able to implement it really low cost, low stakes. You can just literally print out the board games, create your own individual questions and scenarios, and students can work through this to graduate with their diploma and graduate with integrity. So definitely starting to unpack how you can embed these conversations around academic integrity within a curriculum can really be an important strategy, and the board game can be one of those. In addition, for us at UniSA College, with obviously moving to online for a lot of courses over the past couple of years with COVID, we've also been improving our addition of embedded activities if students aren't able to have those discussions about academic integrity in tutorials. So this provides some more opportunities to work on academic integrity misconceptions in much more an active, engaging and participatory way. And with H5P activities, our LMS of Moodle allows us to use H5P, and that can be used across any LMS. Provides these additional chances to practice and receive feedback, and just making sure that they're understanding the procedures that perhaps may be already located on the library research page or on the student study support, but often students won't go to those outside links unless they're embedded within a course or within a particular activity. So all of this information is already found on the UniSA library page, but we've just been able to adjust these 2-minute, 5-minute low stakes activities where they can check with drag and drops, fill in the blanks to participate with understanding referencing, plagiarism, academic integrity, and so on and so forth. So using these H5P activities gives students simple, quick checks to get that immediate feedback that can be really important. But they're just a couple of the little initiatives. But really, I hope what we can showcase to you all is it's really about connecting all of the stakeholders. And this helps to close that loop of academic integrity. And as Snejana alluded to with our processes, it's beginning with better support with post-investigation follow-up. So what do we do once we have an interview? What happens next? So it's not only about the students, it's not only about the staff, both academic and professional staff and any academic developers and learning advisors that might also be within your institution, but it's also thinking about how academic integrity is working within your program and also across the wider institution as well. So this could be, for example, reminding students to provide a referral to a learning advisor for some support. It could include working with learning advisors or academic developers to assist in support for course coordinators to adjust assessment topics or essay questions each year. Or if we may notice a pattern with additional cases in certain courses for certain assessments, or even a lack of referrals to us as the academic integrity officers may indicate that we need to chat with those course coordinators or people involved to make sure that academic integrity is being done in both a sort of top-down and bottom-up way across all of the institutions. So our tutors involved, our course coordinators involved, other students involved. So it can't just be up to one piece of the puzzle to I guess, abide by academic integrity. Everyone really has a role to play in this, and this culture shift takes time, and supporting positive academic integrity throughout the wider university and community is really important. So one of the things that we do quite a lot is look at the data over several iterations to do all of those things that you can see there to make sure that if we notice some discrepancies that we can then enact on that, and it's an iterative and continual process. So some of that, some of those ways that we could integrate academic integrity in curriculum development, some examples of those supports could be clarity of instructions with assessments. So sometimes it can be as simple as changing a couple of words on an assignment template or the guidelines within a course outline. It could be, particularly with COVID, with changing from in-person tests to online tests, do we need to support course coordinators to develop further question banks or make sure that they are randomizing their questions? If it's moving from in-person exams to online exams and quizzes, can we understand what we are assessing and what format works best with creating those assessments, really thinking about the design of course and assessments with COVID shift? Or is there gradual support for more authentic assessment as well? And then finally, it can be, of course, that support for academic staff and course coordinators to think about the questions that they are asking for students with their particular assessments. So if it is going to be open book, or because it's online, we would have to assume open book, do they change the wording of their questions? And also, will they be adjusting the specific topics for assignments regularly as well to help that curriculum development is really integrating AI in those practices? And we've also continuing to develop our reporting processes as well. We have a locked down OneDrive reporting table to have an ease of filling out that information. One really key thing is to make it as easy as possible for tutors and course coordinators to get that information to you. And it needs to be simple, easy to report, and has consistency with the AIOs looking across all of those cases. And we currently share a role across the year with 2 academic integrity officers per semester with our particular cohort. That ensures transparency of processes, and further, the university, UniSA, is looking at further integrated systems in future, which is really exciting to make sure all of that data is all collated and together to keep those processes and looking at that iterative support further on. So our reporting processes, we just have a clear table, making sure all of those details are included, some tutor commentary so that we can give the best outcomes for academic integrity, and make sure that course coordinators feel that they can refer cases to us and that there will be an outcome from that. So just a very quick example. So overall, as I hand over to Tam, it really is about this culture shift. So it's a continued collective effort across all stakeholders, really helping to train and work together towards a common goal of integrity. And hopefully you'll see that we all play a critical part. And now let's look at some professional development resources to see how we can help staff play that part as well.
Thanks, Anthea. Thanks, Shnez. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. I'm just going to adjust my camera here. Apologies, everyone. The office is a little crammed and my webcam sort of sits to the side. So forgive me if I'm not looking directly at you while I'm progressing through the slides. But hello, yes, my name is Tamara Olpen, also an Academic Integrity Officer at UniSA College. But for this part of the webinar, I'd like to focus on some professional development and resources which I've put together to help academic staff with their management and investigation of AI cases. So last year, I'll just go back to the first slide. Thanks, Anthea. Last year, I took on a secondment role for UniSA's Central Teaching Innovation Unit, I guess as the Academic Integrity Officer for the university. And the brief of this role was to provide expertise and support for academic integrity across the university, mainly to ensure that there was consistent and appropriate application of policy. So this involved a number of different projects, but mainly I reviewed and I developed a suite of resources, online resources as well, to help newly inducted academic integrity officers navigate through the investigation process. I coordinated and delivered some professional development workshops, helping academic staff with integrating academic integrity with the design of their curriculum. And there was also some consultation and discussions surrounding workload with AI. And this then led to some amending of policy documents, which I was involved with. So there was a number of different projects going on, but I'm just going to discuss the main ones today, just to give you a sense of how it's helped academic staff here at the university. Thanks, Anthea. So UniSA has 8 academic units, and in each of those units, there could be anywhere from 3 up to around 10 academic integrity officers. And now at my last tally, I believe that there's currently 53 academic staff who fulfill the role of academic integrity officer. And most of them will have the support of 1 or more professional staff members who assist with the administration support of cases. AI is certainly a huge field. This secondment role was really only a short term of 10 months. So when I started, I really wanted to make sure that I jumped in and was addressing areas which needed immediate attention. So I was very keen to meet and consult with the academic integrity officers around the university, just to get a sense of how I could support them and what resources they might need to do their job. So this began with me meeting with some of the recently inducted AIOs, just to gather information on how they were coping in the role and what type of resources that they wished were on hand throughout their induction process. And in conjunction with this, I met with all of the AIOs, whether they'd been in the role short or long term, and I asked them to jump onto a SurveyMonkey and respond to questions which provided me with further detail and information regarding their experiences in the role. But also I found that their responses indicated that there were some similarities, but also some differences that were occurring in the processes throughout the different academic units. And that was really something that I wanted to address. So these conversations were really quite valuable. They helped me identify what projects I needed to initiate and make some headway with. But they also revealed that there were some inconsistencies and some concerns with the following, such as how we follow process. Process, I mean, in terms of how we go about with our investigation and management of cases. It's fair to say that there is a unified educative approach across the university in terms of making sure that we're there to support the students in understanding what is ethical academic behaviour. However, there were 1 or 2 discrepancies in terms of how the process of managing the cases was taking place. So this is something that I wanted to address in the role. There was some concern associated with workload and administration support for AIs and helping them manage their cases. And I think this is probably a concern that is voiced throughout many institutions. Some of the newer academic integrity officers expressed their concern with not knowing how to manage conversations when they were in an interview with a student and in investigating a case, not knowing what was the right thing to say, what was the wrong thing to say, what tone of voice, and how they could deal with supporting the student, particularly if it was a rather emotional case. And finally, and I think that this is really an ongoing thing, this is obviously an area that involves a lot of subjectivity and conjecture about how we proceed with determining and reaching fair outcomes for academic misconduct. And as I said, this is an area where, you know, we often need to consider all the contextual cases surrounding a case, such as what's its learning background, it's obviously looking at the Turnitin report, but sometimes there's a lot more outside of the Turnitin report that needs to be considered, such as previous behaviour, if this was a repeat academic integrity breach, if the student is aware of discipline conventions, etc., etc. So this is one resource that I thought I need to put something together to provide some guidelines or some examples of what would be some typical outcomes for determining an educative approach for each case. Thanks, Anthea. Okay, so I started off by focusing on UniSA's academic integrity process flowchart. And I would assume that most institutions have some sort of process or model that they follow to for their investigation of AI cases. Now, UniSA had an older process flowchart, and look, it did a reasonable job of explaining the different stages and steps of the investigation process, but it was a little bit crammed onto the one A4 document. And we actually went through an academic transformation in 2020, which meant that the terminology needed updating. So I took to task on developing a new resource with updated formatting so that academic integrity officers could clearly see what the investigation process looked like from start to finish and could identify the 6 main stages of the process. And I, in tandem with this, I created a video resource to sort of talk academic staff through the steps in the flowchart, and I used a common plagiarism case scenario in order to do that. Thanks, Anthea. So, workload association with AI is such a huge topic nowadays, and one that I think we need to keep continuing on with the conversations, because taking on the role of
Amandeep, can you just hang on a second?
There we go. Just taking on the role of academic integrity officer is an honourable position, but one that takes on a lot of responsibility. So we do need to recognise the workload that is associated with it, and think about how we can put in processes and have conversations about making things more efficient, move more efficiently for our academic integrity staff. So with the senior staff of the Teaching Innovation Unit, we held consultations with AI staff and with the Dean of Programs from each of the academic units, because what we wanted to do was get an idea of what was the workload association for the investigation and management of AI cases in each of the units. And we really wanted to understand whether there was any differences in how the workload was being managed. And as a result of those conversations, we identified that the AI role really has 3 rather broad key responsibilities, which include case management, which is obviously the investigation and weighing up the evidence, making decisions, applying outcomes, providing leadership in academic integrity for each unit. So that is advising, mentoring staff with AI processes and reporting back to committees. And then there's an expectation for the AIOs to engage in professional development. So at UniSA, the AIOs are expected to attend quarterly meetings and also to participate in any scholarship and training. So these conversations were really quite valuable, and it led to the development of a document titled Minimum Guidelines for Managing AI in Academic Units. Quite the mouthful, and I certainly won't bore you with the details of going through that entire document. But what I will say is that there were two key came from that process. And one was that there should be a recommended workload associated with case management of 2 hours per case. So that involves the investigation, the weighing up the evidence, the meeting with the student, and the administration that goes with it as well. And it was also recommended that there'd be at least 2 academic service officers, so they are professional staff members per academic unit, to help the AI staff with their investigations. Thanks, Anthea. So still on the topic of workload here, the start of the pandemic last year saw that there was this massive move to remote assessments, which of course had implications on assessment and curriculum design, and as such had implications on workload. And it left a lot of staff in sort of this disarray of, what do I do? How do I now deliver my content? How do I change this assessment task? That, we really had to change our thinking as to what each assessment task, what the objective of each assessment task was, but how also we could maintain the security of those assessments too. So in response to this, I hosted a professional development workshop, which really looked at how we integrate academic integrity in curriculum design. And in this presentation, we had various academics from around the university share their practical approaches and examples of fostering AI into their teaching. So we had presentations which included academics from STEM. There was a focus on an AI literacies module, which was successfully run in a first-year sustainable engineering course. One of our UniSA online lecturers spoke of her redesign of an assessment task, which looked at encouraging students to look at their feedback, read through that feedback, but also to be able to analyse the Turnitin report. So, encouraging students to use the Turnitin resource as a valuable resource for them. It's not just for staff to vet to see if there's any text matching going on. It's also for students to use to their benefit, to see, sort of put the onus back on them, that they need to have that responsibility in making sure that there's that they have engaged in the correct paraphrasing and the correct acknowledgement of other sources, etc., etc. And then, of course, we had our own Anthea Fudge here and Dino Mertic from UniSA College, who talked about some of the resources that they have embedded in UniSA College's core course, University Studies. So the other workshop I delivered, and that was looking at how we interpret Turnitin reports. And we also discussed some marking strategies for helping us identify any discrepancies in students' work. And I co-presented this workshop with colleague Sandy Barker from UniSA Business. So I recognise that a common complaint in regards to AI and workload is the marker's responsibility to oversee the Turnitin reports and refer suspicious cases on for investigation. And understandably, this can be particularly onerous if you're teaching a large course of 300 to 400 students, say, and you have to go through all these Turnitin reports. So which ones, should you open up all of them? Which ones should you pay attention to? So in this presentation, I discussed strategies to help staff deduce which Turnitin reports should be opened and should be analysed. And from there, I basically talked the participants through how to navigate through the report and understand the functionality of its features to identify if the matching text indicated potential misconduct or whether it was actually due to other circumstantial factors involved. Now, as I said, Sandy is from UniSA Business, and they tend to have some different misconduct to what we experience here at UniSA College. In particular, there tends to be more cases of commercial contract cheating that go on. So Sandy has particular experience in detecting if a student has engaged in that sort of behaviour. So her presentation showed us how we might identify other discrepancies outside of the Turnitin report in students' work, such as looking at the document properties of a text and looking at variations in language style and referencing, and really any other reliable indicators that may flag dishonest work, such as contract cheating. Thanks, Anthea. Now, I mentioned before that I met with some of the newly inducted academic integrity officers, and a number of them actually suggested that it would be helpful if there was some sort of resource or guideline to assist them in how they conduct AI meetings or AI interviews with students. A number said that there was sort of this assumption that they should know what to do when they first meet with a student, and that it was quite daunting holding their first AI investigation meeting. They not quite knowing how should we set up the room, what are the right things to say, what are the things we should avoid saying, what tone of voice should we take, should we drive the conversation, or should the student drive the conversation? What happens if the student starts to cry? What should you do if the student is aggressive or evasive? So what are some of the strategies and what are some of the approaches that are appropriate in each of these situations? So in response to this, I sort of put together these guidelines to help academic integrity officers know what, how they go about, how they navigate that process. And I also recorded a resource called Conversation Starters, which was really a video that talks them through those guidelines. And still on this sort of area, thanks, Anthea, next slide. We were really lucky to enlist the support of a student actor. And I thought, rather than just having a document that lists guidelines, we need something visual. We need an example. So I wrote a script of a typical academic integrity investigation meeting surrounding. It was a case about appropriate paraphrasing and acknowledging sources, and this student actor was just so lovely and incredibly talented. And we sort of said to her, look, go for it. You can be as defensive or as sassy as you want in this particular scenario. And she did a great job, which sort of gave me that chance to demonstrate how you would deal with if a student gets a little bit emotional or if they're quite defensive, and turning it more into an educative process where you're making it sound like that, they're not in trouble, but we're here to help them. So that was really the whole point of that video there. And just looking at the time, so this will be my last slide here. Okay, so I mentioned before, this is an ongoing resource. I think a resource such as this is one that keeps evolving, and it's on the topic of providing guidelines to help academic staff reach and determine a fair outcome of a misconduct case. So I was rather unsure about how I go about putting this resource together. So what I actually did, I began by reviewing extracted data from the 2018-2019 academic integrity database, which we have here at UniSA. And I used that data I collated it and I identified what types of breaches were occurring most frequently in what units and what the patterns were for outcomes given in correlation. So that helped us categorize misconduct as we put it at UniSA, as in terms of the severity of the case. Is it a minor? Is it a moderate? Is it a major case? What else do we need to look at here? We need to, outside of the Turnitin report, we also need to look at various other contextual factors, such as what stage in the program the student is in. Was there enough level of instructions provided for that particular assessment task? What's the student's learning background? What was their intention behind this misconduct? Okay, and so this document that I put together sort of looked at different breach types, whether it be plagiarism, whether it be third-party assistance, falsification, exam breach, etc. And they're basically examples which are put forward to explain how you might consider the severity of each of those cases and what a fair outcome might be as a result from that investigation. But also, and I keep stressing this, the resource also includes various academic counselling that should be provided to the student in relation to specific academic integrity breaches. So that's a sort of an evolving resource, because, as I said before, it's quite a subjective topic, and one which I feel different academic staff have different perspectives on how we deliver outcomes and what they should be. But again, it's something that we should keep the conversation going with, and make it a collaborative process amongst the AI staff in each institution. I'm going to wrap it up there because I'm just aware of time, and say thank you for tuning in. I believe we've got 5 minutes if there are any questions. I think the chat's been going on. But what should we do, Praneet? Should we open it up for questions? How would you like to manage it?
Absolutely. So thank you very much for that. That was wonderful. And yes, the chat was going off actually, and I'm glad that Anthea and Snezana were on top of it. So thank you for that. You did promise to share our video if you can. I'm not sure. There was a couple of questions that people were interested in looking at that video. But before we do that, perhaps can we just open up to the floor if you like? Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? Anthea, did you want to unshare your screen just so we can see any people if they that's great. So as I said, if you've got any questions, just please unmute yourself, and you're welcome to ask any questions that you have. I think all the questions that are coming in the chat has already been answered by Snezana and Anthea already. So apart from that, if you've got any questions, please go ahead.
Would participants like to see the video?
I think there were some comments that people were interested in watching the video. Look, just before you do that, we are supposed to finish at about 2 o'clock, but if you are happy to hang around, if the video goes on a little bit longer, I'm pretty sure that should be fine. If you do have to be somewhere else, please, by all means, but I think hang around if you can a little bit.
Great. Have you got the link, Anthea?
Just give me 2 seconds.
Thank you.
If anyone has questions before we share it.
While you're sharing that as well, I just wanted to say thank you. That it was actually really, really refreshing to hear the way you people have gone about sort of engaging with the academic community in this process as well, but also significantly supporting the students through this journey as well. I think that's actually, to me, even more important. So that was really wonderful to see. Thank you.
Thanks, Praneet. It's certainly an area that the three of us are very passionate about, and I guess our own professional development has stemmed from our experiences in the academic integrity field, and it's certainly one that we're enjoying. And as I was mentioning earlier on, I think it's still a field where we're constantly trying. Things are evolving. Detection of cases is now a much wider topic that's talked about, but certainly recognizing that academic integrity really should be part of teaching and should be embedded within what we do. It should be a transparent conversation with our students. It certainly shouldn't be looked upon as a taboo topic. So hence why we are strong advocates of the educative approach. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Did we want to quickly show the video for those who wanted to stay on the line and have a watch? And thank you to everyone for being involved and for listening in. We really appreciate it. Okay, I guess I'll press play and let me know.
Sounding great.
Hi.
Alex.
How are you? Oh, that's great, mate.
What's up?
Well, I just received this letter from the Academic Integrity Officer.
Oh, that doesn't look good.
Yeah, they're saying that I need to go to a meeting.
Ah, I've seen one of these before.
Really? What happened?
I had one last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you've got nothing to worry about.
Okay. Are they helpful?
Oh yeah, the Academic Integrity Officer needs to talk to you about the similarity report when you submit an essay.
Okay.
It's not just about copying, it's about how we do referencing and information gathering.
Can you show me on the computer?
Yeah, come over to this one here, I'll show you how to check it. So, looking here, when you submit the assignment, there's a percentage thing that pops up right here.
You mean that thing?
Yeah, that's a similarity report. And we need to click on that link to check it. A really good bit of advice I got in the meeting was what you can do is submit your work, and if the similarity report shows a high percentage, you can re-edit your assignment.
Oh, yeah?
And then resubmit it.
Oh, okay. Now that I think about it, there are parts of my assignment that are highlighted in colour. I did rush it a bit.
Yeah, that's probably it. If you were rushing the last few paragraphs and didn't change enough of your writing, Turnitin will pick up on that. And in the meeting, they're going to give you lots of techniques for using paraphrasing and expressing your own words and ideas. Oh, okay, I forgot to tell you too. You might think there's a perfect score for Turnitin and that solves all your problems, but it's not like that at all. You really need to look at your own work and look at the Turnitin report and assess your own work that is adequate for the job. And, make sure that you're paraphrasing correctly.
Paraphrasing? I just don't get it.
Yeah, paraphrasing is different to what I originally thought. In the meeting, they talked about how it's really all about using your own words to describe the research that you've done. And they talked a lot about not being super academic about it, but being simple and clear. And they even mentioned the fact that using too many quotes is not a good thing either.
I had no idea. So you just can't put a reference next to the quote.
Yeah, so they were saying that if you use too many quotes, it's not really demonstrating that you understand the work, you're just taking an author's words and putting them in your own assignment. So the suggestion was keep those to a minimum and only if you really, really need to use them.
Thanks for the advice. I'm not as worried anymore.
Excellent. Hey, how you going?
Hey, Alex.
Hi.
Thanks for the advice you gave me the other day about meeting the Academic Integrity Officer.
Did you go?
Yeah, I did. They essentially told me that I need to make sure that I paraphrase properly, I check my reference list correctly, and look at the similarity report every time I submit my assignment.
Awesome.
Everything you said.
Oh, cool.
They also said that they will allow me to resubmit my assignment, which was pretty cool of them. In the future, if it happens again, the penalties will be more severe. I'll get it right though, and I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Thanks for everything, Alex.
No worries. Do you want to get a coffee?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so they were just past students that volunteered, so not actors, but yeah, we shot it really quickly, did a quick script, and we've been using it since 2016. So it's not a perfect video, but we just include that in each of the emails for interview, just so you can hopefully alleviate some of that fear or worry about attending a meeting, because it's really important, I think, to engage the students with the process. So if they don't attend the meeting, then we can't have that engagement and we can't close the loop. So yeah.
It looked pretty perfect to me, actually. It's a really wonderful video, and it's really nice to see. It was very obvious the care that you people have in this approach at your institution. So it's really, really nice to see that. Look, we've come to the end of this presentation. I know we've gone a little bit over time, but if anybody has any questions, and if the presenters have another about couple of minutes, I'm sure they'd be happy to sort of answer any questions. So if you do, you're more than welcome to just unmute yourself. I think just looking at the chat, for example, I think it's quite obvious that most of the people were very, very happy with the presentation today. Look, once again, this webinar, I'll turn my recording off, so I can wrap it off quickly. Where's it gone?